Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and our esteemed guests. So hopefully we're going to go start now. A quick introduction about Professor Salim Al-Hassani. He's an emeritus professor of mechanical engineering from Manchester University. So anybody Manchester United or Manchester City football supporters? He's also the president of the Foundation of Science, Technology and Civilization in the UK. It's a non-profit organization, non-political, non-religious, and is founded about 7,300 days ago. We were having a joke about this. 20 years ago, it's celebrating its 20th anniversary. And it's dedicated to researching and popularizing the pre-Renaissance era. So obviously, the developments of science and technology are always built upon one another. He's also the chief editor of the 1001 Inventions, the enduring legacy of the Muslim civilization, which is published by the National Geographic. He also has many numerous other publications, journals, and international publications. And an interesting little fact I discovered earlier on, he's actually born in the land of the original House of Wisdom, which I thought was very fitting when he comes to the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, which, as our founder said, he wants to be the new House of Wisdom. So please join me and welcome Professor Salim Al-Hassani.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maaz. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming in such a wide attendance to see a variety of audience here. Men, women, young, old, different nationalities. This is excellent. This is the sort of atmosphere I enjoy, because then it will make the point that I would like to make in this lecture. What is this title? The title was chosen by somebody else, not me. I was going to talk about slightly related subject, but I think it's quite appropriate to say time and the golden age of Islam. That brings in the concept of time, because KAUST is celebrating time. Now, calculating time has been, from kingdoms come, as a long time ago when people began to want to measure time and assess it. From the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamia, Greek, Persians, Indians, Chinese, Muslim civilization. But the idea of measuring time and the importance of making gadgets to monitor time has really thrived in the Muslim civilization. It's just exploded. Obvious, because they were very much interested in time. Muslims' life is sort of governed by time of prayers, time of Ramadan, time of Hajj, so the time became much more important in the lives of Muslims. So it really, therefore, we could see that there was a huge interest when Islam sort of emerged after the Greek and the Roman and the Persian civilizations. My interest came in the problem of neglect of the contributions of various cultures apart from the European culture. I was brought up, although as a young boy in Baghdad, the House of Wisdom, where the House of Wisdom was established, but most of my life was actually spent in the UK as a young student, and then later on did my postgraduate work, and then worked between England and Germany. And I also had the pleasure of working in Riyadh in 1970-71. So I'm quite familiar with the, but of course times have changed. 1971 is a long time ago, and I noticed this change enormously. So this subject is about the neglect that I have noticed, and hence made me make a major change in my life when I had presumably excelled in my engineering work, had a lot of awards and money, companies and industry and so on. My research was into oil platforms in the North Sea. So, but then one day one of my professorial colleagues, Donald Cardwell, he said to me, look here, Salim, what are you going to be doing with your life? I said, what do you mean, what am I going to be doing with my life? My life is I'm doing my life. He said, no, no, no. You've done very well, you know, distinguished professor, you've got companies, you've got money. The highest paid in the university because of all this external money that comes in. I have a share in it. And then he said, I have spent most of my life in the history of science and industry. He was a professor of history of science and industry, head of the faculty of history of science and industry. And he said, I noticed that there is a gap about 1,000 years, which we call the Dark Ages, in our history of science. And I said, yes, why? You know, what can I do? He said, well, actually, this period coincides with the Muslim civilization and a bit of Indian and a bit Chinese. I said, yeah. He said, well, you're a Muslim, and you come from that area, and you're a mechanical engineer, and you should be able to do something about it. I said, come on, Donald. I hate history. He says, what do you mean you hate history? So the history that I was taught in Baghdad when I was a young, you know, in the secondary school, it was history of people killing each other. Wars. You know, this tribe killed that tribe and so on. In fact, until now, ingrained in my mind, 2 warring tribes in the north of Iraq and Turkey and so on, and they are called Qaraqoyunlu and Aqoyunlu. What on earth should a young man of 15 years of age or 16 years want to know about Qaraqoyunlu and Aqoyunlu, which means Al-Kharuf al-Abyad and Kharuf al-Aswad? We spent our life, you know, studying these things. He said, no, no, look, the history that you were taught is history of political and religious history. What I'm talking about is history of science. It's a different thing altogether. I said, what do you mean? He said, each of these scientists had a fantastic story to tell because they were driven by different incentives. There were people who were interested in how things work, how this life operates, the nature of, you know, the sky, how mathematics works and so on. So they have a different life. And despite all the turbulence in governments and wars and so on, there's a different community altogether. And they talk to each other, whether they were Muslim, Christian, Jew, or whatever throughout the world. I said, oh, that's interesting. Let me have a look. As a professor, of course, what you do is you do a feasibility study. You find out, is this a worthwhile area to get into? And in fact, I was gobsmacked when I found that he was saying the truth. It is actually a huge gap. You go to the book of physics, you turn from page 1 to page, whatever it is, 350. I think in my time it was Nelkin and Parker. I don't know whether there's still people to use this for A-levels and so on. And you take the name of each inventor or each scholar, you know, like Newton, Maxwell, and so on. You put them down on a timeline. You start from Archimedes and Pythagoras and so on, and then towards until recently. And you find the names European. No, but recently a bit of American, but European origin. There's none, well, almost none, Indian or Chinese, no Muslim. Now that's really strange. Does that mean these people didn't have any contributions to make? That was the question. So to me, it was really an interesting subject. Oh, well, actually, there's something that one can go into and produce something new, and there it was. It took my life, and that's what brings me here. Because since 20 years now, when I took early retirement, that's why I am named as emeritus professor, right? It means a retired professor who still holds the position in the university, but without any work for the same subject that one is professor of. So, let's see. There was a book at that time when he asked me to have a look. My feasibility study took me to this book. And you see this book, it says the people who made technology from the earliest times to the present day. So that means he's got it all. If you want to know about history of science and technology, you read this book. It's a huge book. It's a table, coffee table book. And, you know, it's sort of every 2 pages is about a scientist, right? So the page, this page here is 14, and 15 is the next one, which I'm not going to show you the 15. So this is 14, which is Archimedes. And notice the date. I'll get it come out of the board for you. That's the date. So that's this page. The next page will be 16, because the other page is not showing you that. The one follows in time, chronological. Right? This is, do you notice the difference? Let's go back. Archimedes, BC, right? And then you have a huge move with nothing, no pages in between, to Johannes Gutenberg at 1400. And then Leonardo da Vinci comes in. So what we really have, in summary, from that book, is that you've got a huge jump between Archimedes, Johannes Gutenberg, and Leonardo da Vinci. Where are the rest? You've got hundreds and hundreds that follow after that. I'm not going to show you those. So in summary, you go to chemistry, you go to physics, you go to biology, mathematics, engineering. It's the same story. And this story is summarized here. Previous centuries, they're not mentioned much. The Greeks, Romans, nothing, Dark Ages, right? And then the 15th and 16th century, we have the European Renaissance, when Europe suddenly woke up and showers from the sky of all knowledge comes in just like that. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, and everything. This all seemed to come suddenly, right? And then we are followed by the Industrial Revolution, when the science and knowledge now is directed towards making things. And economy has taken over, market forces began to operate so that it began to become commercialized. And then you have modern day civilization. What really should be taught is something, that have to fill in that gap. So, so when you want to look at it again, you find that even in Europe, we don't have Europeans with Arabic names mentioned there. And yet in that time, the red part, this is the time when we call Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain, smack in the Dark Ages and Medieval Ages, but no reference to it. And there are hundreds and hundreds of scientists and scholars and medical people and engineers and architects and so on, nothing mentioned. And it really is very sad, because we're not being educated properly. It seemed to sort of only one-sided. And so just to give you a very quick, don't expect you to read that. There's 600 names there who should be just like that. And if they were alive at that today, they would be members of the Fellowship of the Royal Society in London, straight away, right? And if you have I picked 40 of them, there are 2 ladies there among them in red, they would probably get Nobel Prizes for science, right? Now, so what it should be, should be the picture. This is the KAUST community picture. When people come from different parts of the world, different ethnic backgrounds, different faiths and so on, all together, and they study and contribute, and hence you have this kind of, so that is what I call balanced education. We have developed a lot of courses in those subjects, in STEM subjects, so that we can add enrichment to the professors and teachers of schools, what they need to enrich those subjects so that they become balanced. And those of you who are interested, they can contact me through the email system, and we can provide assistance in this. All right? Now, let's get to our subject. The neglect of the Chinese, Persian, and Indian and Muslim appears even in today when it comes to talk about clocks. You go to the National Institute of Standards in the United States. This is the official government. The historical review which they publish about clock and time, it is called Walk Through Time. You go there and read it. Absolute neglect of anything to do with Muslim civilization. No clocks from there. No time machines from there at all, right? There's only one mention of a Chinese clock. So this is, therefore, a very important subject in my view. I think that if we have to mention names like Isaac Newton and Archimedes and others, we should mention others as well. Either you mention names, Or you don't. If you don't have to mention Newton's law, you can call it a gravitational law, right? But if you say Newton's law, you're associating a name. Okay. Well, when you have other people from different parts of the world who also contributed, they should be recognized. It's only fair, isn't it? We're not talking about religion or politics in here. It's just a question of being fair. You now are being taught to publish papers, and you make sure you've got your name is in the authorship, and you claim for it. And there are nowadays even patenting. When you have an idea and you want to commercialize it, you register your name. There were no patents in those days, and there was a lot of transfer of technology. So in that particular time, what we call the golden age, there are a few important things that have actually happened. The first clock, really sophisticated means of measuring time that we can have in record in terms of Muslim civilization in Baghdad is the one that is from Harun al-Rashid. There are mentions of Al-Jahaz and Ibn Zuhur and Ibn al-Haytham, but it shows that at that time, from the year in the 9th sort of century, beginning throughout the 9th century, from 807 onwards, there was a lot of interest in clocks, and they appeared in many places, in princes' places, in caliph palaces, and so on, and rich people's houses. Right. I'm going to show you this. This clock, right? It's supposed to show something. Hello? Ah, okay. Now, it generates sound. Every hour, there's a horse come out of a door, and those spheres, balls, they fall down onto a vase, and they make noise. This was a clock that was sent as a present from Harun al-Rashid, the House of Wisdom guy, Harun al-Rashid, the famous, the 1001 night, right? We've now changed this. We make people, when they speak about Baghdad and House of Wisdom, we say 1001 inventions, right? Not 1001 nights, right? That's, yes, fine, 1001 nights, but people seem to always, when they see people like you and me, they associate them with Ala-ad-Din and the magic lamp, and Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, Sinbad the Sailor, flying carpets, and belly dancing, and so on. That's what the civilization of Baghdad is. But when you talk about Harun al-Rashid, time, that he gives a clock like this, to whom? To Charlemagne, the Roman emperor, who was seated in Aachen, in Germany, right? He is the founder of modern Europe. And he would give him this present, showing him the sophistication of technology. When this clock arrived in the court of Charlemagne, that Charlemagne means Charles Magna, Karl the Great, right? When it arrived in the court, and all his ministers and so on, and the delegation who came and they set it up, the delegation was led by a Jewish guy, by the way, and he learned how to do this from Baghdad. And when they arrived there, they set it up, and then they presented to Charlemagne the Great. They ran away. They were shocked. They thought there was some jinn inside it, because it's working automatically, and these horses coming out. And so what's this? So it's sort of technology seemed to have also found its way in diplomacy and clock, right? People want to show that they are strong, like want to send a mission to Mars, right, and so on. This is sort of, it shows a degree of power. It's not just inquisitiveness, but it really gives some, nations to it. Harun al-Rashid did the same. But he also sent something very interesting with that clock. He sent a young elephant, the color of which was white elephant. And the name of the elephant was Abu al-Abbas. And this elephant was part of he also sent with it, with its whole package, a huge marquee, a tent, made out of silk. Silk at that time was very difficult to make, especially in large pieces. It is a sign of culture, of prosperity, art, right? And so he sent those three to Charlemagne. They became friends. Of course, Charlemagne became friend with Harun al-Rashid. This is some political here, because they were both against the Byzantium. Byzantium, and they both were against each other. Anyway, the story is also, by the way, Abu al-Abbas became the pet of the emperor. Wherever he went, instead of carrying a dog or a cat or so on, and you find this great white elephant, right, is walking with him, and his name is Abu al-Abbas. Unfortunately, Abu al-Abbas got cold and then got pneumonia and died. When Abu al-Abbas died, there was a royal funeral. A royal funeral. Now, I'm not going to count the story. Maybe I'm saying it in a bit of a dramatized way. But this is a real story. And this is from the French archives that record what happened in the court, what happened. The details of this clock are not only from those archives, but also from Muslim manuscripts. And these clocks have been described. One of the fine descriptions of such clocks is you never know where you can, where to find it. And Imam al-Ghazali, the one who wrote Ihya Ulumuddin, the famous faqih, Ghazali, he has a section in one of his books about al-qadr, about whether things can happen by chance or not. And he was declaring that there's nothing like chance. And he says every action must have been preceded by a cause. And that cause was preceded by another cause. So he's like, in his time, there were no dominoes, so he can describe to the public about the domino toppling one bit to the other to show you there is a chain reaction. So the last domino has moved because you have moved the first domino, and the second and the third, they knock at each other. So Al-Ghazali was trying to explain to the readers this process, but he described the water clock, how it works. This is incredible, isn't it? So that means that water clock was quite popular. In order to give you a religious example and show you how things occur, he shows you how the water tank in a clock, and there is a float, and as you put some hole in the tank and the water bleeds out, right, the float will come down and it pulls the pulley. He described it to us, and so we have transferred this description into engineering drawings, and then we made animations. So that's your Harun al-Rashid. Now, this business of what is the secret behind telling time, it's just a hole in a bucket. That's how they use that. They call it clepsydra. There's a bucket of water, there's a hole on the side. As the water comes out, the water level comes down. And as the water comes down slowly, you can use it to tell time. The Greeks, the Pharaohs, the Mesopotamian people had done that, and it's called clepsydra. And out of that, like we find that in some of the pyramids and so on, we find this in many cultures and civilizations. These clepsydras then become more and more sophisticated, and one of them is by Al-Jazari that we have here, which is called the beaker clock. A guy who's sitting on the top with a pointer in his hand and telling time as it goes round, and this is how it works. It sort of, as the water bleeds out from the bottom, the float comes down, and then it turns a pulley, and things happen. But this motion can be transferred to all sorts of other things. It can be transferred into machines, like in this one in here, it's by Archimedes in the Greek time, and another one here, another advanced clepsydra by Costipius. The Chinese, the problem here, by the way, when you have water coming out of a tank or a bucket, it doesn't move slowly. You need to control this. So either you control it by having different buckets, like now, and here, you see this in here, that's how the Chinese did it, or you shape the bucket. Those of you who know about mathematics and physics, you can actually work out the equation of the shape of the bucket. It comes out into a parabola, because the velocity of the water as it comes out is proportional, is governed by the height. And the height is the pressure, right? So you get velocity squared, and hence you get the square root of the height, so it's a parabola. So you do this like this, then it moves uniformly down. There are other ways of controlling this. So that's a bit of physics and technology for you. There is another form of telling time, and that is you, instead of putting a hole in the bucket and you fill it with water. No, you have another bucket full of water, tank, and you lower an empty bucket with a hole in it. And as you wait for it to sink, that's how ships sink when they have a hole in their body, right? And so the time it takes for the water to fill in this is also measure of time. And you can calibrate that and so on. This is Indian technology and Persian technology. It was actually moved also to the Middle East and also reached Spain. Until now, in Spain, in Ishbilia, they have some similar systems like that. When they decide one farm needs to have water, the other farm needs to have water. So how do they divide the water? Each of them decides how long it takes for their water to go through, so that they shut the gate and then you open another gate and another gate and so on. Every Thursday, they meet judges in Ishbilia to decide about who gets what and what. It's all decided by time. And this particular time, this clock, very simple and crude, it will be something like that. It was like a tasa, just a metal hemisphere with a hole in it. You put it in water and you wait for it until it sinks, makes noise, bang. So that's the time, whether it is an hour or so, it depends on how you calibrate. It's quite simple. But things can actually become quite complicated. And Hassan ibn al-Haytham used this technology, even though Hassan ibn al-Haytham is known to be the father of optics, and he has really, he's well known by the West, is recently recognized by the UNESCO. In collaboration with the UNESCO, we have made an exhibition called Ibn al-Haytham, right? And this going around the world of Ibn al-Haytham. The work that he had done is enormous, but he was originally from Basra. Before he goes to Egypt and get involved in the making of this book, the Al-Manazir, the book of optics, he was an engineer in Basra, and he made, in one of his manuscripts, he described a clock. And this clock is based on the principle of this Tarjahar or the Indian or Persian. I'm not going to go into details. He had to have two of those because as the one goes down, you need to refill. By that time refill, you need to get continuous time. So he makes these two staggered cylinders, and so you can tell the time on the top continuously. Now, of course, we had to get this information from manuscripts, right? And you have to read what he's saying and the way that he describes, and he transfers it to engineering. This is fascinating projects for the university students. Right? You can actually do this. You learn from the manuscript. You find out, you try to predict what he actually tries to mean. You use computers to, trial and error with using engineering drawings, and you can convert it into 3D Max software and make it into 3D animation. The most sophisticated and beautiful clock is the one that you had in the beginning, Yusha, and you've got it in your museum in here. And the elephant clock that you have in the museum here is also, I was the design consultant for that because people didn't know about this. We got it from the book of Al-Jazari, understood how it worked. And originally, it was actually, I had two Chinese third-year students in the engineering department who had looked into this and designed it, and we made it into 3D animations. I love this clock. Why I love it? Because it tells you a lot of very interesting things. Al-Jazari, in the year of, this is how, by the way, we do it piece by piece in 3D animations, and this is how it works. I like this clock because what Al-Jazari is sending a message here. And this message also resonates with KAUST, with Dar al-Hikmah aspect, right? He has chosen right at the top a phoenix, a bird phoenix. And that was the symbol of the pharaonic civilization of Egypt, right? He has chosen Chinese dragons, these like snakes. This is to recognize Chinese technology. He has got an elephant instead of a camel, right? Or it could have been anything. Elephant refers to India, so he's effectively mentioning Indian technology there. Then in the belly of the elephant, there is this Greek Archimedes sort of. And the one who's driving it, the one who's telling the time of, there are a number of clocks in here, is the Muslim, right? So you got on the top, some people say he was referring to Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, because he was an Ayyubid at the time of Ayyub in the city of Al Jazeera and Diyarbakir. But in any case, what is interesting about this clock, you can call it the clock of civilizations, because he is recognizing the contributions of various cultures into it. Long before, people, when I showed this, when it was in the United Nations, and Rahmatullahi alayhi, King Abdullah, the founder of this university, they've asked me to set up an exhibition in the United Nations because he had a huge conference there for heads of states. And some of you might have seen an interview, I was being interviewed there and so on. When Condoleezza Rice was the foreign minister of the United States, she came and she saw this clock and I told her about the story about it. She says, my goodness, this guy is telling us a lesson that we should recognize and respect other civilizations and cultures. Right, so let's move on. This is, we built a big one in Dubai Mall. There's a smaller one in here in your exhibition. And there is one that is going around with our global exhibition, which goes around. It's called 1001 Inventions. It's been in almost every country in the world. Only recently, by the way, it was exhibited in Mecca as well, in the Hilton, near the Haram. This is another, it's like a computer, but it's a clock, and it's called the castle clock. It has got a number of features in it. You tell the time by the number of doors are opened, and also as the birds move and they drop a sphere onto a vase, and it makes sound. Right? The beauty about this is that those musicians on the outside, they actually, each hour, they start playing, but it's all automatic. This is like 1,000 years ahead of AI, artificial intelligence. It's a computer. It's all automatic control. And those of you who study control, it would be great to do diagrams, control diagrams for this and see how it works. You can do calculations, mathematics, and so on. Make it really beautiful. Of course, in his time, they didn't have the powers that we have in computation and mathematical analysis. They used to do it by trial and error. You see how this, it's really fantastic. Look at this turbine as the water comes down, and then these will cause the musicians to work, right? Because it's all working on levers. Right, the secret of the movement is this valve, very simple valve, right? It's a timer, it's like a scaper. There's the escapement in a clock. When this fills, it empties as it becomes heavy and so on, and then that generates motion. And these are the musicians who are now, because they are being operated by levers from the back. Now, we move all the way from the east of the Muslim world into the west, into Spain. Muslims in Spain, they also had enormous technology and science, and they had clocks. This particular clock is very similar to the one that I just showed you, except that it works for 24 hours, and it has 2 tanks, and they help each other into that. And this clock is made by Al-Muradi in the 11th century in Qurtuba. Right? He didn't know, unfortunately, of Al-Jazari's clock. They lived almost at the same time. Now, the way it works is here again, these doors, they open, and then you have spheres falling onto those buckets or metallic vases, and they tell you the time. There's another clock that he made, which is like a solar clock, very interesting. There are 2 parts in it. The front part is in the outside of a mosque, and the inside is that wall which has got a marker. You notice that his writing to tell the time is 1, 2, 3, 4 written like that. These are what is in the manuscript. So they are Arabic numerals, right? And people name those numerals Arabic because the Roman numerals at that time, they were X, L, M, I, and so on, right? And the way this works is fascinating because as light comes and shines from outside, it goes through that hole, and that hole is part of a disk that rotates by a pulley, and the pulley is pulled by a float as there on the left-hand side, and the water is below the ground. And as the time passes, see the light goes there, and there is a mirror, and that light will travel from one number to another. So it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and so on. See the light as it goes around? Genius. It's in a book. It's been discovered. Unfortunately, the book is damaged slightly. And the office that designed all the Leonardo da Vinci's machines, they actually ones who recreated from that manuscript the work. So this is another one which is still alive today, and that is the Bournania clock in the city of Fas. When you go there, it's now refurbished. You can't say this is, but actually this is the earliest Big Ben in the world. Big Ben, you know. It gives you enough sound for the city to hear. Right. The way it sort of it appears, now they have refurbished it, but unfortunately they're not able to recreate the clock itself. We try to tell them that we have now discovered how this worked, because there are some secrets. You know, when you live in these clocks and these technologies, you will know how they work very quickly, because they are similar to each other. This one is a huge building. Right? You see these shops underneath. And each window, right, opens at an hour. And there are mizrab, or we call it spouts, that let spheres come out. And in the bottom row, there are vases that are missing now. I'll show you one of them. These are, you know, like buckets, vases made out of metal. And as the spheres fall into one, it makes sound, bang, and people will know it's an hour. Then you look up and you'll see which hour it is. But there is a secret of this. There are 13 instead of 12. What is the 13th for? You can get a PhD if you know. All right. Very interesting secret, because it has a lot to do with the way it is controlled and the time it requires to refill and so on. It's very, very interesting. Now, let's move on. We did a 3D animation of this because we now know how it works. And we've done this. It's a complicated clock, and we feel that we can actually rebuild it if needed. The Moroccans, well, they probably expect a rich Saudi to fund the project to do that. Say, well, look, if the Saudis want to build it, they will go and build it in Mecca, and build it in Jeddah. Why build it in your place? They can still name it. They say, well, we want it done in the same place. That's fine, but we can build models of it. You build models. Build a model of this in a KAUST. Very interesting, very complicated. Really, it shows you the apex of technology. Now, this is supposed to give sound, right? Maybe it is another one. These are clocks. You can have them in gardens. You can have them inside your house. They work on water, and you can control the timing, and it has a siphon as the water fills in one tank, and then suddenly it goes down because there is a siphon that takes the water out, and as it comes down, it sucks air. And when it sucks air through a whistle, it gives you a sound, like a music. And there is another timer, which is interesting, and that is the wudu making machine. This makes wudu. It's a timer as well. This is a Taus peacock. You bring it to the guest is sitting on the floor, and the guest wants to do wudu. You don't send your guest to somewhere and you go there. There's scarcity of water, and the guest receives this almost like what you call it, samawar, right? It comes like big teapot. But that you just hit the beak, manqar, right? Make a movement there, and then it starts working. It knows exactly how many times you need the water to perform your wudu. Hands, mouth, nose, arms, face, right? Feet. It knows how many times you need it. It keeps coming, giving you. So it doesn't continuously give you, because it saves water. It gives you what you need and goes back. Gives you what you need, go back. And the timer, there's a lot of timing in it. And when you've finished, it clicks, goes around, give you a towel. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, this is 1,000 years ago, in this part of the world. Yeah? It really is fascinating. And the way it works, nowadays, we use it in our toilets. It's the flush system. You know, when you flush the toilet, and then it has to refill, this one refills automatically once, twice, 3 times, and so on. It's the way it is designed, and I'm not going to go into details, but that's what's inside that peacock. There was also a sophisticated mechanical clock that you use a heavy weight on gravity, and then as the weight comes down, you have a gearing system, and then you also have a timer, which is called escapement, and this escapement is like the tick-tock. Tick-tock. This is when you count time, because you have to tick it to count it, otherwise it's continuous. And that's done by Taqiyuddin al-Rasid in Istanbul in the year 1550. There were similar clocks in Europe. We don't know who took from whom. There is no record. He doesn't say where he learned it from. They also don't say where they learned it from. Now, there's another fascinating clock. Some people say it's not a clock, but there is reference to it in the British Museum, and they wrote about it, and this is in Granada. In Granada, the Qasr al-Hamra, the Hamra Palace, there are lions caught, 12 lions, and the lion's mouth gives water. At the moment when you go and visit, I was there recently, we've done a conference there in Al-Hamra, right, on these subjects. It was a fascinating conference. So you go there and visit, you find what happened. All the lions give water at the same time. Not very exciting. In the earlier years when it was made, we are told that each lion, with the first lion at the hour 1, will be the first lion only that will give water out. Then after 1 hour, it stops, and the second lion will give water. So there is a distribution, intelligent computational control system. Without electricity, no motors, all done by hydraulics. So that's another fascinating story to tell. You could actually make a system that, and there were also other means of telling time using, what do you call it, wax candles, right? You could use when you burn a candle, and as it reduces in height, that is also a measure of time. There are other forms of burning candles, which is you burn oil. You have an oil lamp, and as it burns, the oil level comes down slowly. You can calibrate it and tells time. There is a great historian called Lisan ad-Din al-Khatib. He was describing once when he went into Al-Hamra Palace, there was a big party, and he describes a huge chandelier. And this chandelier is full of oil lamps, but each lamp had a certain amount of oil, so that when it burns off, it's 1 hour, and then another hour, and another hour, and then you can calculate the number of hours and what hour it is. So these genius devices were invented to tell time. And of course, I'm not going to be telling you that time is very important and so on. I think you all know about it. What I would like to do is to actually finish here, and thank you for letting me speak, but also I'll be quite happy to have questions and if there is any comments and so on from the audience. All right? How am I going to hear that young lady? Is there any? Good. There's a floating box.
Thank you very much for this interesting topic. My name is Milausha, and I would like to ask you what would be the recommendation for us as the international students to applicate more the science from the Muslim? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good subject. This is actually the main aim of our foundation that we have established 20 years ago. We wanted to promote this knowledge so that it becomes popular in the public mind, so that people start respecting each other. you know, when they know that, you know, if you are sitting with the Chinese and then you tell the Chinese, oh, well, by the way, you know, we know all about gunpowder, you know, you guys invented gunpowder and things like that. So you're very happy. Tell them about the campus or something. So you go and sit with an Arab or with a Turk, with an African. There's a lot of science from Africa. There's also from South America. So people are creative in nature. Every human being is creative. You know, it just gives them the right environment and they excel. So it is not very special to be a Chinese or a European or an Arab or a white or black and so on. You know what I mean? It's just, it so happens that you were born at a particular place at a certain time from a certain family. So the facilities of the mind that God instills in human beings are very similar. And it's a question of how does one go about solving it. We solve problems every day. When I came in here, I had to solve a problem. I have to rush to go and put my suit on, to get ready on time, and so on. These are all various problems. You come in here, we found the car park is blocked, we have to find another way. So these are solving. So the same thing, in order to come here, you have to solve challenges, problems, from the morning. Right? Even kids, they have to get up to bed, you know, go to the school to take the books with them and so on. But the problems that these people solve, they are not felt. They don't influence society. They don't touch the public conscience. When does this solution become important? Is when it hits this whole society. It is like a medicine that improves cancer, or a medicine that's, so then it becomes, you know, it's the same exercise of the mind of solving a little problem. It's the same exercise, it could be solving that, but it so happens that particular solution make a huge invention, and then you get a lot of money, you get a lot of recognition and so on, and people will be talking about you. Human beings are creative. So I think that KAUST, they could work with foundations like ourselves. What we do is that you have professors who teach those subjects. If those professors go through a course, 1 or 2 days course, and they read a couple of books about the subject, then they know, they have a background. So when they come to Newton, when they teach physics and come to the name Newton, there is an opportunity to inspire the students, to tell them some story that students begin to love this subject. They enjoy it. They would like to become like Newton, or they would like to become like Al-Hassani, right? Who you can mention at the time of Newton, because Newton is famous to have said that if I have seen more than others, it was because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. So he's a good man, recognizing the importance of the contribution of the people before him. Yeah? So that he's saying that I only saw more because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. The problem in this particular thing, and the professor, if you are teaching that subject in physics or maths and so on, say, the problem is, who are these giants that Newton was telling about? So you make an assignment. They go around the internet or look at books. Who did he refer to? Right? Because they are not in the book of physics. There's a jump of 1,000 years. And you go and discover, actually, he must have meant Salim Al-Hassani, because he was the man of optics and so on. And so, and the same thing you mentioned in mathematics when you come to speak about algebra and sines, cosines, and trigonometry and so. These are opportunities to say, by the way, it's this business of algebra. You know, guys, you know, the students, do you know a guy called Al-Khwarizmi? Algorithm comes from his name, algorithm, right? You know, all these computer algorithms, we use that word. It's actually the name of that guy. And why he's so important? Because he's written a book which is called Al-Jabr and Al-Muqabala. This is the fixing. Al-Jabr means, Jabr al-Idham means fixing of bones. It's called Al-Jabr. And Muqabala is the equating. Right? So by trying to find an unknown, we call X, right? We call, in Arabic, at his time, they used to call it shay. So he puts a shay, we don't know how much it is, as part of the mathematics and arithmetic. And then he puts on one side, right, this shay plus another thing, multiply another, divide by another, equal to something. And by solving the equation, that's called algebra. That shay, which is unknown, we now called x. There was a guy, he said, some historian, he said actually the word x comes from the word shay because it came through Andalus in Spain, and the difficulty of pronouncing shay, it became thay, and the way to pronounce thay is they use x, xay. So that's how the x came to the Latin Europe. I don't know, some people dispute that. Anyway, so the idea here, you have stories and nuggets that you can use as, you know, when you have a dish that requires, what do you call it, put spices on. You put the spices in your lessons. The teacher puts spices and make the lesson exciting. They tell them about, you know, when it comes to universities, and we speak about graduation, we speak about professor. Where does the word professor come from? The word chair come from? The word come from chair? Chair comes from the Muslim universities, the Muslim mosques. Until now, you go to mosques in here, in Medina, in Mecca, and so on, you find there is a kursi for a certain sheikh. They say, this is so-and-so's kursi, right? So it is the chair. That's where it came from. Chair of something that comes in from the Muslim civilization. So there are stories which we could tell. When it comes to, for instance, women, you say, well, right, universities, women. You can give the story of Fatima al-Fihriya. Fatima al-Fihriya, 23 years of age, young lady in Morocco, in the city of Fez. She inherits with her sister, each of them inherit a big hunk of money from their father. Right? Her sister builds an ordinary mosque called the Andalus mosques because they come originally from that part of the world. What Fatima al-Fihriya did, she built a mosque, educational mosque, with a school and subjects taught, some of the subjects, not only religious, scientific subjects as well. That mosque became very quickly a university, and it's called the University of Al-Qarawiyyin. This University of Qarawiyyin, from the year 865 or 859, sorry, is still alive, functioning at the university until now. Right? How many years is this? This is her university. But you know what? It wasn't a question of giving money. This young lady decided that she would project manage this. She took charge of the building process, like an architect or a civil engineer. But she put a design criterion. She said that I don't want anything that comes from outside this land. Everything has to be made from the land, from the dust, from the wood, and dig for water. Every part of that building comes from that land. And on the day of the launch, you know, when you open, they didn't have cutting ribbon at that time. What she did, you know, there in Arabic they call there is a misha, you know, there is the shovel you put on the floor, you know, on the ground. She took it, Bismillah, and pushed it there and started fasting. She said, I'm fasting until the project finishes. How long did this project last? And she continued fasting 13 years. Now that's a role model for you, young girl. 13 years fasting, building the first university in the world that is still alive today, right? That's Fatima al-Fihriya for you, right? That's how important these ladies were. And there are many like them, like these ladies. So you can, when the subject of science and technology and management and medicine, you will not only find men, you will find women also in that, in the Muslim civilization. So that gap, the amnesia that we saw in the graph of 1,000 years missing, and we find that there are no Muslims mentioned there, but there are also no ladies' names in there. You go to your book of physics, go to the book of maths, and your chemistry. You tell me the name of a woman scientist there mentioned in those days. None, right? Boyle's law, Archimedes, Maxwell, Euler, right? All these names, they're all men. Only recently, the European movement of women to try to get their rights and so on. Women like trash in those days, in those countries. Whilst in the Muslim civilization, my God, it really is an eye-opener. So when you have girls in your classroom, you can get them inspired. You get these, not only the boys get inspired, but the women get inspired because they had a fantastic contribution. Maryam al-Ajliya used to build astrolabes. To build an astrolabe, you have to be expert in astronomy, expert in maths, you have to learn about metallurgy, but also she built astrolabes. Sutayta al-Baghdadiya, Sutayta was in Baghdad. She became not only a faqihah, a jurist in knowledge of Islam, but she was a mathematician. And they used to use her as an expert in court. She was an expert witness. When there is a dispute about hereditary, or a dispute about a land, or a building that is not complete, or a company that has been dissolved, how do you distribute? How do you make just decision? They bring her, and she would use mathematics and algebra to calculate and tell the judge, this is what I found, and then he will decide over there. So, sorry I took long, but this is a very important subject. What we could do is to enrich the subjects, these subjects, we call them STEM subjects, the science subjects, the technology subjects, engineering subjects, mathematics subjects. You enrich them with some good spices. Whenever there is a nice story, you don't have to change the curriculum. You don't change the curriculum. We're not changing the subjects itself, but you make it interesting and you link it with your own culture, whether you are in Arabia or in China or South America or Africa. Okay? Thank you.
I would like to thank you first for coming here and share these facts, especially in a multinational place like KAUST. So my question is, wasn't the measuring the shadow from the sun also one of the earliest measuring calculator for Muslims, especially for time for prayers?
Yes, thank you so much. You mentioned that because this is what we call the sundial. Yes, I've forgotten to mention this. This was a very popular one, but what the challenge in this is, what Muslims were very good at, and other people from different parts of the world, they always use, pillar, because it's a very easy thing to see, a shadow, and it's going around, changes height, so you can tell and calibrate it. I've seen one outside here, right? But the challenge is, you make a sundial that works equally the same in winter and summer. All right? That is the challenge. How can you do that? Because the sun position changes. The brilliancy of this is that you have to know geodesic, you have to know the planet Earth and the geometry, how it tilts, and the movement of the Earth about itself and its wobbling, and also the movement in the orbit around the sun, on the location, and you work out. We tried one in Manchester. We built one in Manchester and put it on one of the walls in one of the buildings there. And we need to have a huge, powerful computer to solve these equations to actually find that. But in those days, they had some other experiences. And you find there are some sundials. One of them is in Damascus Mosque. Well, I've seen one in Damascus Mosque in Jumaynaway. I've seen one in Isfahan when we visited some 15 years ago. I had some Iranian students and they took us there. And there is one in China. There are very clever, they are independent of sun, of winter and summer. So that's the challenge. This is really a common technology, but the machines that started building, because you can tell at night, the water clock, the importance of the water clock, that it works at night. I tell you what, I've actually finished a book on the history of clock, and I called it The Journey of Clocks in Muslim Civilization. Unfortunately, my publisher has been sitting on this book, right, for the last 1.5 years, doing nothing. And I said, look, I wanted this book because I'm giving this lecture. I wanted to, and I'm sorry. He's short of money. I said, look, give it to me when we put it in the public domain and publish it in Google, He says, no, I spent so much money, I want my money back. Anyway, so why I mentioned this is that in this book, there are quite a number of very interesting, the devices, and it shows a lot more than what I mentioned in there. the beauty of to be in here, and because you're so close in Mecca, I asked a number of people in Mecca who know about Islam and so on, they call them fuqaha, and so on. And I asked them, I said, look, I have seen these clocks in the Muslim world, 807 Harun al-Rashid. Now, can you please tell me, I heard that Harun al-Rashid goes every other year, he goes to Hajj, to Mecca. How can we not find a clock there? When he gives presents, wouldn't there be a clock there? We don't know. So, not a bit of digging. This is a good topic for PhD, to find out the clocks of Mecca. I can help a little bit because I found some. There was about 300 years ago, the oldest picture of Kaaba, there is, just where Zamzam is now, there were two domes, qubbatain, right? One of them is they called Ghurfat al-Maktaba. This is the book room, library. And the other one, they call it Ghurfat al-Sa'a. Now, when I showed it to some of these respectable characters and so on, I don't want to mention names, they say, yeah, that was a sundial. They call it Mizwala. You know, Mizwala means you look at the zawal of the shadow, Mizwala. I said, I'm sorry, it cannot be Mizwala because it's indoors. There is no sun indoors. This is a clock room. The Mizwala is outdoor. Give up. Then anyway, that disappeared. That dome disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. Then suddenly, at the time of the Ottomans, because what happens is they started making clocks using European clocks. And so there was a pillar where the big clock tower now, there was another small tower in Kaaba. Right? They replaced it with that. So that one of the earliest Ottoman clocks in the Kaaba was, but it was actually made, I was told, in the UK. And somebody said, he was joking, he says, probably it was made in Manchester, where you come from. I know one of them was made, and it was put in Iraq. I think it's one of the clocks of either Karbala or Najaf or something, because the Shah of Iran has given that gift, and it was made in Manchester. But anyway, these are modern European clocks. They're not original Muslim clocks. So it'd be interesting to find out about the clocks of Mecca. Sorry, I've deflected a bit.
Hello, thank you so much for your humble presentation. I would like to inquire about the 24-hour. What is the reason behind having 24 hours in the day? Is there an inspiration behind it? Like, we know in Islam that the Hijri calendar is based on the moon, and it's very obvious to know that it's 30 days, it's equally segmented. Is the same thing with the time, the clock, the angle of the sun, or is it also the moon? Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a student like you are of this subject. I cannot claim to, but what I have read about and learned, there are two systems. One of them was originally used by the Mesopotamia, by Babylonians and Sumerians. And this is the, what do you call it, the sextimus system. It uses 60, 60 degrees, yeah? That's where it comes from, because their numerals were 60. And it was, the idea was how to easily use hands. You can actually calculate on the 60 system by using hands, and I can't really say. But you can use hands and use the, because we have, in the computers, use 0, 1. In our normal calculations, we use the system of 10, 1 to 10, right? But they used 1 to 60. And that's where it comes from. The 60, 360, 60 degrees, yeah? And the circle and pi is all 60 degrees, 180, 90 degrees. So this sort of we're affected from there. And the idea of dividing the Muslims, they did not have 24-hour system as such. Their clocks were different. They had two types of clocks. One is the running clock of, it doesn't matter whether it is day or night, it just tells you the time. But the Muslims, religious communities, and they were mainly religious communities, their clocks were different, because they take the beginning hour is when sunrise. And it ends sunset. So that's the day. And their 12-hour is divided on those days, and on this day. So it will be different hour each time. The length of each hour is different, right? So the day being short, so it's a short hour divided by, the middle will be the Zuhr and Asr and so on, yeah? So that's what they did. And at night, of course, you have to use a different system because not the sun, you may be using candles or whatever light, or using water clocks, it's the same. So this is a different system, which is the one that you referred to. But the other system is that equal hours, like the one we see in Bornania and many of the Muslim clocks, they just sort of look at 1 hour after another hour. It doesn't tell you when is the sun rising, when is the time of Zuhr prayer, and so on. It doesn't tell you that. In fact, there's an interesting, Muslims were really, these great, they were very clever people. They used to name, every hour has a name. Did you know that? Yeah? You know, like Fajr, and you know, there is, every hour it has a name. Let me try to get that, and I'm not sure whether we have time, but let me try to get that. It's fascinating, it's somewhere here. It really is just incredible. Right, let's see now. Ah, there it is. I don't know whether you can actually read it. Yeah? Can you read Arabic? Yeah. See, it has names. Like Al-Fajr at 4 o'clock there, number 4. It doesn't mean it's 4 o'clock, but that's the, before Fajr, there is the Zalla, there's the Zulfa, Al-Bahra, Al-Sahar, Al-Sahar, and then Al-Subh, Al-Fajr, Al-Subh, Al-Sabah, Al-Shuruq, Al-Bukur, Al-Ghudwa, Al-Dhaha, Al-Hajra, Al-Dhahira, Al-Ruwah, Al-Asr, Al-Qasr, Al-Asil, Al-Isha, Al-Isha, Al-Ghurub, Al-Shafaq, Al-Ghasaq, Al-Utmah, Al-Sadaqa, Al-Sadfa, Al-Fahma. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? This really is high culture. You know, you could say we'll meet each other at Al-Fahma hour. They give you the time, they give you the name of that hour. Well, can you imagine somebody tells you, we'll meet you at Al-Qasr? Right, okay. Any more? Yes, ma'am. Go on. There's quite a few.
My question is...
Is that from the top?
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is, so how did people get inspired by other people that made the clock?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
So if somebody made a clock, how did other people try to make other ways to do other clocks?
Yes, the clock industry is very active. You know, there is something that looked like a huge giant not far away from here, built in the Kaaba, right? That's this huge big clock in Kaaba. Some people are very proud of it, and some people don't like it, right? Because they think that's just overshadowing the Kaaba. But this was a pride. That clock is an atomic clock. It works on the atom, very accurate. And it was made specially, and it was put on the top of the tower. It's sort of a symbol of high technology and recognition that King Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, wanted to prove and show and give service to people to see from a long distance so that they know what the time is. So that clock is different technology. Where is the young boy that was, or is it a young girl? I can't find right at the top. Yeah. So you see, there are different ways of telling time. In those days, there was water, there is wax burning, there is sundial, and then later it began to be mechanical, so that the gravity works on this, and then it became electric and magnetic, right? And then it became what we call transistorized, and now we have electronics, and now we even have nano. So, you got micro, 1/1,000,000th of a second, you can tell the time. So knowledge advances. Yes.
Hi. How critical is the environment for coming up with an innovative idea? And what environment do you consider today to be an optimal environment for coming up with an innovative idea?
That's outside my expertise, isn't it? I mean, not about clocks, but we can always, my opinion will be just as good as yours on this because I am not really an expert in this. But I was told when I was a young lad, I was brought up, by the way, as an orphan, right? Struggled in life. I have to sell in a small tray in the souk, on a tray, and put a wooden box underneath, Pepsi Cola box, and another box I sit on, and whilst I'm waiting for clients 7 years of age to sell, I was doing my homework in school, right? That's how life sometimes can be quite hard. But when it comes to, say, innovation and so on, one guy, one of my elder relatives, he said to me, "Young man, I can teach you anything, but I can't teach you common sense." You can't teach common sense, right? So there is this idea of innovation, creativity has a bit of common sense in it. I'm not saying that you cannot teach creativity, because you have to have an encouraging environment. And how can you be innovative when you're hungry and dying out of hunger? If you are in debt, if somebody is haunting you and causing you problems, right? Accusing you of all sorts of things. If you've got problems with your wife or with your father, your mother, with your friends, if you're in love with somebody who doesn't want to know about you, these are problems that are external problems. They will not help you they may help you to be creative in solving that particular problem, right? How to convince your father that he's having something, or how to convince your future wife, to sort of, the way you dress, and so you try to be creative, don't you? And so these are solutions, but in terms of science and research, we need to have an environment. In those early years, there was an interesting environment, and that is what Islam came, it has brought with it a new paradigm shift. It was a new paradigm. Suddenly, when a person becomes a Muslim, connected with God through salah and prayers, this is internal spiritual energy, right? Input. Iman is input. And then what is supposed to do? Output is amal salih, right? Externally, you have to do something useful. Amal salih, if you go and ask many of our sheikhs, unfortunately, nowadays, sorry, I'm not being critical, but they will tell you amal salih means more salah, more reading Quran, more this. What? I'm afraid it's much bigger than that. Amal salih is like what Fatima al-Fihri did, like what Sustata has done, or Maryam, those people who did industry, people who did. This is amal salih. Anything that enriches the quality and improves the quality of life to human beings, animals, and the trees and environment is called amal salih. This new paradigm came, and it made every one of those wake up to this idea that they have to find something and solve the problems for others. The one who solves problems for another becomes a friend of Allah, right? This is the idea. So this is a new atmosphere. They didn't have to have, force to do things. It was self-generated interest in knowledge and applying the knowledge. So that was one. Then there were something else. You got somebody who wants to get this done, but he can't. Or he has money. So they set up waqf system. The waqf system, which is endowment institutions, right? These money given by those people will be spent to create that environment so that they can do the research and they can develop and they can solve their problems. Problems in society has to be solved. Not only industrial problems, not only medical problems, not only engineering problems or social, but there are also social problems. I found when I was reading about the history of waqf, believe me, it's incredible. There are waqf institutions for stray dogs, to help dogs, stray, to get them to feed them. There are waqf institutions for birds. waqf institutions for animals, that you have to give the horse a rest for 1 day a week. They give waqf to pay you so you don't hurt the animal. Give him rest for 1 week. And I found a very interesting waqf. These young ladies will be very happy to hear about it. You know what this waqf is about? This waqf is for the zawjat al-ghadibat, the angry wives. Waqf donation, to help angry wives. How is that? You find many of the hammams in the Muslim world, there is special areas for ladies. And these ladies, they go there to wash and so on, they call it hammam. And they sit down and then gossip and talk to each other. Normally, a woman comes angry from her husband. She comes there, she comes out feeling happy. Why? Because she finds, oh, thank God, my problem is nothing compared with the other people's problem. All right, I give up. Thank you.
Here. Right here.
Ah.
My question is, what happened to the Muslim society after like the Golden Age, and they were like rising up to the top, and then suddenly Europeans go.
You're a clever boy. You are. Somebody told you to ask me this question because I'm not going to go political. But I can tell you something. They say, an Arabic example, they say, ما طار طائر وارتفع إلا كما طار وقع, or something like that. Civilizations, my boy, they go up and they come down. Like companies. You make a company, it starts set up, good investment, a lot of enthusiasm, you do very well, then some new generation comes in. And this new generation, it's like your father. Father worked so hard to get to what he did. Then you come. You're enjoying your father's money and his success and your mother, right? So you don't work as hard as they do. Now what happens when you grow up, you get your child. He is even less interested than you are. So the third generation starts wasting the original energy that was. This is normally the story, but the story of Muslim civilization is slightly different, actually. There are a lot of, this idea of amal al-salih, which is self-generated interest in asking God to be happy with you by doing work for others, that's gone. That's gone. It become more commercial, right? It's sort of narrow. Now religion and for amal salih, you make taqwa. When a rajul muttaqi, oh, he's a nice guy. Actually, amal salih means he's a guy who's just sitting exclusively somewhere in the corner of a mosque. This is called taqi salih. But amal salih, which is to improve society, right, is not anymore linked. It's separated from the faith. Okay, young man? It became narrow, and then they lost it. Right? And then, of course, in history, there was huge problems of wars. There was the Mongols. They came, and they wiped out everything. Right? Muslims never survived after that. Yes, the Ottomans came. They did excellent. They were a warring dynasty. They were so busy trying to defend the Muslim world. But the whole Muslim world was effectively feeding the Ottoman to try to defend. So all the farms and industries, they were manufacturers and providers for a big, huge army going into Europe, army going up to Russia. So the whole Muslim world became sort of busy with itself, and unfortunately, that's what happened. But there are signs that things are coming up, like KAUST. This is very similar to Dar al-Hikmah. You can get KAUST to do a huge change in the world if you all work not for degree only, but to put in your mind that you want to improve the quality of society and humanity. Degree is just by the way. So you don't study so that you get a job. You will get a job anyway, but you should have a higher aim, just like Al-Khwarizmi. Al-Bayruni, Fatima al-Fihri, all these great people, Al-Razi, Ibn Sina, Al-Hasan al-Haytham, they had higher aims. These other worldly problems, they become solved. They are simple. But if you make them your own problem, the preoccupation is to go there and get a higher salary, and then you just get a job, you'll be a very sad person, whether you're a man or a woman. Very sad. You'll never be satisfied. You'll never be happy. You'll be happy when you feel that you have a message in life. You want to improve the society, you want to improve the quality of people, right? That will make you great. The rest comes in. Don't worry. They'll all get there. Yeah. I clap for you as well. Thank you. I spoke heart to heart, right? I wasn't here to lecture you, so we had a good chat, yeah? Thank you.
So thank you very much for that very enjoyable and pleasant talk. We have a small little gift, which
Oh,
you'll
I
be
have
one
a
of the
gift.
few people who can probably actually use it without reading the instructions. It's Astrolabe.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Excellent.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody taking a picture?
I'm sure there must be, yes.
Yeah? Somebody taking a picture? Oh, there we are. Go a little bit of a distance away so that I can...